Hey, how's it going? Jacob here, to review another motion picture for you today. Sorry I've been gone away for so long. I was actually sick for a good while. I was sick for a couple days. I thought it was COVID related, but it was not, thankfully, so that's good news. I did wake up one day with fever and chills, and I thought, like, well, fuck, I have COVID. But it actually ended up not being COVID. I just had a little bit of something, so that's cool. But yeah, anyways, I'm feeling a lot better, so now I'm going to be making more videos. So let's get this shit going. Alright, so let's just get right into the video. I actually just recently watched a crazy Austrian slasher film called Angst, and I would like to talk about that. If that's alright with you, of course. So, what is Angst? Well, Angst came out in 1983 in Austria, directed by a man named Gerald Kargl, I hope I'm saying that right, who really hasn't done much else other than this movie, and the reason why that is because this film at the time it was released was so controversial that the director and Austria itself ultimately decided that he just should not make another movie after this one, so this is the pretty much the only and last film that you will ever see this guy make. So basically the movie is so disturbing and controversial that the director ultimately decided to not make another movie after this one. Angst is actually a movie that I've been trying to watch for quite a while now. I remember back when I was a kid when I was obsessed with watching shit like a Serbian film and Cannibal Holocaust and Slaughtered Vomit Dolls. This was always a movie that I saw popping up on a lot of people's most controversial and disturbing films of all time lists. So immediately, you know, obviously it piqued my attention. So on my never-ending hunt to find what are considered to be the most humanly fucked up and most disturbing pieces of media out there, this movie has been on my watch list for years, and I actually just got around to finally watching it. Angst is a film about a man who is actually not given a name from what I remember, but according to IMDb, his name is K the Psychopath. So I'm just gonna call him K, or the Killer, because honestly, whatever his first name is, whatever his name is, he doesn't deserve to be called that, because fuck that guy. The movie opens up with a very interesting scene where Kay is seen walking up to somebody's house and pretty much just shoots them right there at the front door. And just walks away. Why does he do this? I have no fucking idea. Maybe he was just having a bad day that day. Who knows? The movie then suddenly takes this documentary style route where there's this narrator who is telling us the story of this little boy and the troubled childhood that he lived through by showing us a series of images and videos of this said little boy, or maybe a teen. I forget what it was. He was like 14 or something like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, he was young. The narrator then goes on to tell us how this boy gets pleasure from killing and abusing animals, as well as committing just these other really horrible crimes, and would end up going to jail on multiple occasions because of committing these horrible crimes. So already, this guy is just not setting up a good first impression of himself, like, at all. One day, now as an adult, the man ends up going to prison for 10 years after brutally murdering an elderly woman. The movie then jumps to 10 years later, where Kay is now released from prison, where he sets off to, you guessed it, eat some sausages at a diner as he intensely stares at two women in a very creepy manner. You know, just typical guy stuff. But no, yeah, he goes out and plots to torture and murder these three people in their own home. And that's basically the whole movie. This is a very simple movie that gets straight to the point with a very short runtime of only 87 minutes. The entire movie literally is just following this man in the span of 24 hours as we see him, you know, walking around after just getting released from prison, plotting his next murder, and even what he does after the murder and what he does to hide his tracks. So we basically are seeing this entire process of one man's murder, and that's pretty much the whole movie. That's kind of all it is, honestly. This film is actually based on a real-life case of triple murder known as the Kniesek case. Werner Kniesek was a real-life mass murderer who was born in Salzburg, Austria, and was born in 1946. Kniesek, much like the killer in the film, also had a very troubling childhood, mostly because he never ended up knowing his father, and his mother was trying to get rid of him at a very young age. At age 16, Kniesek ended up stabbing his own mother, stole all of her money, and fled to Germany, where he was then arrested and then extradited back to Austria. Kniesek ended up serving 2 years of juvenile detention for attempted murder, and then finally when he was released, he ended up committing several burglaries and shot a 73-year-old woman. In 1973, he pleaded insanity and was sentenced to prison for only 8.5 years. And was released in early January 1980 for good behavior. After getting released, Kniesek took some money that he made through making illegal liquor and went to Vienna where he bought a gas pistol. On January 16, 1980, Kniesek went by train to St. Pölten, where he broke into a villa of a family of 3. There lived a 26-year-old wheelchair-bound man named Walter, who apparently Kniesek knew since he was 3 years old. Walter was home alone at the time of the break-in, and Kniesek pushed him off his wheelchair and held him down. When his 55-year-old mother Gertrude and 24-year-old sister Ingrid came home, Kniesek ended up tying them both in the hallway of the house. Since the mother thought this was a robbery, she offered Kniesek a check of 20,000 shillings, which is roughly about $180 US. Shortly thereafter, Kniesek tortured and strangled the son Walter with his bare hands, and then he dragged the body and the wheelchair to his mother, where he tortured her as well, and then 3 hours later would strangle her with a noose. Ingrid, the daughter, ended up being tortured and mistreated by Kniesek for 7 to 11 hours, and then was eventually strangled. He also killed the family's cat, lay down next to the victims, and fell asleep. The next morning, Kniesek packed the 3 bodies into the trunk of the family's Mercedes-Benz, where he went on a shopping spree with the redeemed check of 20,000 shillings that the mother had made him. Kniesek ended up driving to a local town and eating at a restaurant, where a lot of people became very suspicious of him when they noticed the large amount of cash that he had, as well as the fact that he would wear black gloves while eating the entire meal without taking them off. An employee of the restaurant noted down the Mercedes license plate and alerted the police, who would then drive to the scene of the crime, where they discovered a broken window. Since the 3 residents were missing, a nationwide search for the family and their car was initiated. Shortly before midnight, a radio patrol car found the car and was able to arrest Kniesek. And while searching the vehicle, authorities discovered the 3 bodies in the trunk of the car. After just 2 days, Kniesek finally confessed to having murdering the family, just purely out of lust and sheer desire to kill. In his court case, he apparently told the judge, and I quote, "I just love it when women shiver in deadly fear because of me. It's like an addiction that will never stop." End quote. Also, apparently the family's dog was still at the house and alive, which means that he was following the killer throughout the entirety of the murder, which, like... St. Pölten. On July 4th, 1980, Werner Kniesek was sentenced by the St. Pölten District Court to life imprisonment and admitted to an institution for the mentally unstable. In 1983, which is also coincidentally the year that this film was released, he attempted to escape from the Stein prison but ultimately failed. The man, from my understanding, is still alive to this very day. And yeah, that's basically also exactly what happens in the movie. The movie is told almost entirely through a narration of the main character, as he explains to the audience everything that is going on in his head. There is very little diegetic dialogue in this movie. A lot of what Case says in the movie are actual confessions and quotes of real-life killers, which makes a lot of what he says in the movie on a whole other level of just unnerving and terrifying. Some aspects about the movie that particularly stand out to me are the cinematography and the editing. The cinematography was done by a man whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, and is incredibly unique and makes the film all the more off-putting, with plenty of long shots, long takes, tracking shots, point of view shots. You know, the camera is all over the place. It was incredibly experimental at the time of its release and kind of still is to this very day. The way that the film was shot and the way that the story flowed was unlike anything that anybody has seen at the time of its release, and it really complemented just the incredibly disturbing and downright off-putting nature of the film. In fact, French filmmaker Gaspard Noé, the man behind many controversial movies such as Irreversible, Enter the Void, and Climax, has claimed that this is his favorite movie of all time, and I can definitely see how he would be inspired by this movie, since the cinematography and style of filmmaking in his movies is very similar to that of this movie. You can tell that he borrowed a lot from this movie, and that he implemented a lot of various elements and filmmaking techniques and themes into his movies, with the outlandish cinematography where the camera's going nuts, and the groovy synth score, and just the way that this film portrays its disturbing content, and the way that it uses these aspects to get a reaction out of the audience is very similar to that of Gaspard Noé's films. So if you've ever wondered what a Gaspard Noé movie would have looked like if it were made in 1983, then this movie's for you. But yeah, overall, I thought the movie was very effective. Do I think it's one of the most unbearably disturbing movies I've ever seen? No. As mentioned, the movie's very simple, and a lot of the time, there isn't a whole lot of action going on, since it is being told through the mind of a serial killer. And he's just kind of seen meandering off and just doing nothing for a good half of the runtime. Like, there's literally a single take where the guy is just walking through the woods for what feels like a good 5 minutes straight, and you know they did that shit on purpose. Don't get me wrong, the film did a great job of capturing the realism due to its unconventional cinematography and fast-paced choppy editing, and the murder itself is pretty fucking horrifying, especially the death of the daughter, who I think has the most horrific death scene in the entire movie. Also, apparently the blood that they used in her death scene is actually pig's blood, and they did this for the sake of adding realism. And I mean, yeah, it kinda worked, you sick motherfuckers. There's also a scene where the killer is dragging the bodies through some broken glass when he's dragging them out the window, and it just looked like the most painful shit ever. Like, I was genuinely concerned for the actors in this scene, because that shit did not look like a good time at all. Although the film isn't too disturbing visually, as again, it's a very simple movie that is only showcasing a single murder in the span of one day, all the aspects of the film come together very well, which makes for a genuinely really uncomfortable and really unnerving experience. The movie got a lot of reactions out of me without having to show too much, and again, this is all thanks to just the editing, the cinematography, the acting by Erwin Leder, the score, the directing, and the narration that is going on throughout the entire movie that gives us a deep dive into the mind of a psychopathic killer. The very fact that the narrative space of the film is all focused on this one psychotic and unhinged man makes the entire experience all the more dark and unsettling. This is honestly probably one of the most pessimistic movie-going experiences I've ever seen, you know? There was nothing that was fun or lighthearted about this movie, like, at all. Although I did find some of the scenes to be a little funny and amusing, one of them being just the fact that there is a dog that's following the killer throughout the entirety of the movie, and there's a lot of shots where the killer is just doing horrible things on screen, and then it'll just all of a sudden cut to the dog's reaction, and he's just fucking chilling there. He honestly served as the killer's companion throughout the entire movie, which is really funny because when you first see the dog, you think to yourself, like, you know that fucker's gonna die. But he just never ends up killing it. In fact, it almost seems like the killer is enjoying the dog's company, so much so that the killer brings him along after the murder to the diner where he continues eating some sausages. Man's best friend has never rang more true than in 1983's Angst. Also, the diner scenes are pretty funny too, mostly because of just the really sporadic close-ups that go on between the women that he's staring at and just him eating the sausages. They're just really weird and off-putting scenes. Also, he's eating a sausage with just mustard, and that's kind of fucking gross. In fact, the entire movie plays as just one really weird and off-putting sequence, and honestly, it could not have worked any better. Because of the unique filmmaking, and because of the fact that it is just based on true events of a real-life nutcase, I can totally see why this movie is one of the most talked about serial killer movies out there. In fact, I'm gonna go on a limb and say that this is probably one of the best serial killer movies that you're going to find in regards to not only its filmmaking, but also just its disturbingly realistic depiction of what happened to be a real-life murder. If you're somebody who is into this kind of shit, this movie is definitely for you, and as being somebody who is into this kind of shit, I really like this movie. Overall, I'm gonna give Angst an 8 out of 10. Just a creepy fucking movie about a creepy motherfucker doing creepy fucking things. Dare I say Margarita Night? Thank you all so much for watching, stay tuned for more videos coming very soon, and I will see you all later.